What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football, sports betting, and NASCAR home here at fakepigskin.com. I am your host, Kyle Robert. Follow me on Twitter at NotoriousKRO. With me today, we're doing a little special, it's golf major season, and when it's golf major season, there's one person I call. It's the real Bobby Adcock. What's up, Bobby?
What's up, Kyle? Hey, it's great to be back here. I think last time we talked, it was the Masters in November, and I was getting ready to not see the sun for 6 months. I'm glad to report that it's north of 60 degrees right now in Michigan. The sun's out, and online sports gaming is all in now. We're all legalized, and we got all the DK FanDuel sports books open in Michigan, so that's been pretty fun.
Man, Michigan's really doing it with the weather and the online gambling, and now their college basketball team is good. Like, I know you're a state guy, but everything's pointing upwards for the majority of Michigan.
Yeah, and Michigan State, rough season, but kind of come on a little bit. So we're hoping maybe we'll see if Izzo can pull another rabbit out of the hat here in March. But it was a fun kind of finish of the season, at least.
For sure. Want to let y'all know before we jump into all this, we're going to talk bets. We're going to talk placement. We're going to even get into some of Bobby's core. If you are playing DraftKings golf and you're not checking out Bobby's article each and every week on Fake Pigskin, you're doing it wrong. Make sure you go in there. His article is live right now. Get set for the players. Get your core intact. Get ready to roll. Brian and I will be back on Thursday to break down yet another NASCAR race. We'll also be back on Sunday or Monday, to break down the NCAA tournament. We're going to go through division or section by section, south, north, all that. Get all that ready to go for you. Give you guys some bets, some outright winners for each region, some teams to avoid, teams to dive on in your brackets, all that good stuff. But Bobby, let's do what we came here to do. Let's talk some players, golf. Before we dive into bets, before we dive into DFS plays, what's your just general overtake of the course, and how are you looking to attack it this week?
Well, as we know, TPC it's been played. This event been played here at TPC Sawgrass since 1982 every year. So I think history does matter a little bit more this week. I think guys who are familiar with the ins and outs and the intricacies of the course, I might lean on them a little bit more this week. And I think the guys that are willing to kind of manage the course, take the medicine and not try to be a hero when the shot isn't there or when they get into some rough patches. Don't try to, crush it out on the green for birdie. Just take a par and move on and take advantage of the scoring chances when they present themselves when you're cleaning the fairway. So I really think it's the guys that have been here before, have played well here, have a nice track record, and just know the course and are willing to kind of take the par when it's there.
For sure. So let's dive into the initial run. The big names at the top, obviously Dustin Johnson, 12-1 is your favorite. You're actually getting double digits on him, which seems like the first time in a long time. Bryson DeChambeau is down to 15 after his big win, along with John Rahm, Rory Mcilroy, Xander. You can see all the rest of the names there if you're over on the YouTube page. Bobby, where's your head at with the initial, dive in with the initial grouping here? If you're betting at the top of the board, where are you looking to allocate your investments this week?
I think you hit it on the head with the point you made about seeing guys like in this category not be at a typical 7 or 8-1, where usually the top favorite is in the golf tournament. I think those are pretty nice payouts on guys like Dustin and Rory. For getting, if you put $10 on a Rory and get $160 as a payout, I think that's pretty generous, more than we usually see him at. So for me in this category, it's kind of boring, but my favorites are Dustin and Rory. I talked about Rory a little bit last week. I just think he's one of those guys who's, they're top 5, top 6 player in the world. They usually get 2 to 3 wins. Rory has yet to do it. He's been close. He was in contention last week going into the weekend, just kind of sputtered. So I still like Rory to get a win here coming up soon. And DJ, of course, is DJ.
Yeah. And it seems like DJ's not really getting a lot of love. And obviously, like, when I'm betting golf, I like to try and to stay in that 20 to 50 range. So it's hard for me to get to a favorite like DJ, but I also feel like he could be a nice value, as we mentioned. It has been like 6-1 in fields that have relatively similar strengths. So it's interesting to see. Rory is technically your defending champion, this was we did our whole breakdown last year and went through all the betting and went through the DFS plays and had a whole thing going. And after round one was when PGA basically shut it down for a few months because of COVID. So it's interesting to get back here. It's interesting to obviously Rory still being your defending champion. A variety of players have won this. Rory, Webb Simpson, Siwoo Kim, Jason Day. You could be a long hitter. You can have good irons. Picking your spots, like you mentioned, is going to be key. So I bet Bryson before last week on a outright, and I got him at 25-1, and I was loving that number. I was very excited about that number. But now he won last week, and I almost wish that I hadn't bet that. As crazy as that is to say, and we could talk about it from DraftKings and from outrights and all that good stuff. But the odds of somebody winning back-to-back tournaments, I feel like is way higher than 25-1. So, should I be upset that I already bet that, or should I be happy that a 25-1 number that I'm holding is now 15-1?
No, you should be happy because you won. But no, I think the point you made about the odds of winning back-to-back tournaments, even though Bryson is the casino, and if he executes his game plan, he can contend and win any week. I just feel like coming back down from a win like that, where it's not a major championship, but I think is one of the more signature events on tours, the API. It's really important to the players because of Arnold Palmer, and they all really want to win it. And I think you could tell when he was talking afterwards, it just meant a lot to him. So to come back down from that and then come back here and win an even bigger event, it's just, man, wow. I think you're just asking a lot. I wouldn't put anything past him at this point, but for me, that's enough of a reason to kind of just fade him and focus on other guys this week.
Yeah, and and that's we're going to have to make stands, right? We're going to have to pick and choose, especially when it comes to DK. We can't play everybody on DK. We can't bet everybody on outright. So we got to take things that may or may not be super, we have to find our ways to be different, ways to eliminate people, whatever it may be. John Rahm is incredibly interesting to me at 15-1. As I mentioned, I don't typically like to go that low. Doing my model over at Fantasy National, as I do when we talk, Webb Simpson is popping in a major way. Typically does well in Florida, has popped in major fields like this, and at 22-1, I think is an interesting number. Cantlay is somebody that I've heard and kind of gotten some buzz about, but where are you at with him after his WD last week? Or I guess what he pulled out before the API even started, right?
Yeah, that's correct. First of all, before I touch on him, are you trying to insult me by not having Tony Finau listed on here at 20-1?
You know what? I was building this last night, and I must have. And I wanted, and we'll use this as a jumping off point because we had talked about this, I think, this time last year, and then again at Masters. It was Tony Finau, it was Jordan Spieth, and Ricky Fowler as who's going to win first. And I'm trying to remember. I want to say you had Finau, and I want to say I said Ricky Fowler because I'm crazy like that. And here we are, basically a year later. Ricky Fowler is not even in this conversation, and Jordan Spieth is basically. He's not back to 2015 Jordan Spieth, but for where he was to where he is now. He's made tremendous strides. He's being consistent. He's popping even at courses that technically aren't Spiethian courses. And at 30-1, we can talk about Finau as well in kind of this conversation where, if you play your cards right, if you can get to FanDuel, he's 32-1. I have the all the odds up, but he's basically 20 to 28, depending on where you look. FanDuel is 32, so if you have access to that and you like Tony Finau, go there. But what a ride last year has been, huh?
Yeah, no, and I think that is funny. I thought about that question over the last few weeks too, because things have changed so dramatically with two of those guys. Well, all three in certain cases. Ricky, we're starting to wonder if we're ever going to see him come back to the level of play he had maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Spieth is the guy that, you talked about where when he gets that putter going, it's almost like just because we've seen it before, you think, okay, this guy, he could absolutely come in and win any golf tournament because he gets in these crazy stretches of golf, whether it's within one tournament or over multiple tournaments. And right now we're seeing actually over multiple tournaments, he's really sharpening up everything. And when that putter gets going, he seems like he can make any 30, 40-foot putt there is. So
yeah.
And we know he's kind of a streaky guy, and he seems to be entering into one of those good streaks. So I think for that reason, when we're talking about guys like Cantlay, Webb Simpson, the aforementioned Tony Finau, I think Spieth with a little better payout. I like him at 30 to 1 a little bit better. Webb, as you mentioned, he put on a clinic here. I think it was 2 years ago, and just completely ran away from the entire field. So he likes the course here. He's been good the last 3 years. I think he had a couple of T16s and then the win in between those. So definitely a great candidate to contend and win. But I continue to answer that question. Let's go back to that question. What would be your answer? I think we can remove Ricky, like you said. So what's the answer now? It's between Jordan and Tony.
I think Jordan's the answer, and that's crazy to say, but I love Tony Finau, and if I'm making a top 5 bet at 4 to 1, I love that number. I think that's great odds. And Tony Finau, he's gonna win. He's too good of a golfer to not win on the big stage. But at this point, even in the last couple tournaments, he has just consistently been second, third, fourth, right in that conversation. You never on Sunday feel like Tony's in position to win this. Even when he went to the playoff, 3 weeks ago,
Yeah.
Against Max Homa, and Homa ends up taking it down. And Finau's always in that conversation, but him and Xander both always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
Yeah, and I think I still believe he's going to win, like you said. Eventually, I mean, it's just a matter of time. He's way too good, and he's playing. Yeah. I would say, arguably, outside of winning, I can think you can make a case that since the restart, they've kind of gotten this thing back on track here. He's already played the best in the world. I mean, he really has. He's so consistently finishing high, and I think in terms of DFS as well, his floor is as high as any of these guys right now.
Yeah.
So
that's where I'm at with for Spieth could have a bad week and completely tank your DK lineups, but as an outright bet, I think he makes a ton of sense. Where with Tony Finau, I don't worry about there of course there's going to be bad weeks. Golf is hard, but majority of the time, I feel like he's gonna be out kicking his coverage, doing outperforming whatever his price is on DK. And, if you can get him on a top 5 bet at 4 to 1, I think that's going to be something that cashes a hell of a lot more than it doesn't.
Yeah. So I think in that range, if we're talking about the Cantlays, the Simpsons of the world, I'm actually going to opt for Finau and probably more for Spieth, because I just, Spieth has that proven pedigree and the track record of winning the big events.
Morikawa, obviously 22 to 1 is incredibly interesting, but the name right above him is the one that I don't know what to do with. Justin Thomas at 20 to 1, opened I think 22, so he's moved a little bit. I bet him a few weeks ago to not a good success. Seems to have a lot going on mentally, and when you can't focus mentally, it's really hard to play golf, a sport that's already incredibly difficult. But that 20 to 1 number for, arguably one of the greatest, if not the best golfers going right now, obviously his recent form hasn't been good. dealing with some issues both on the course and off the course. Do you have any interest there, or do you need to see something come together with JT before you can get involved?
I need to see something a little bit more. I think obviously kind of some off-field stuff with him. I think maybe has rattled his cage a bit. I think you can actually draw a straight line back to his results since then. So, yeah, I'm kind of wait and see for him to kind of move on and get past that. Not to say that that's exactly what it is, but I think the timeline you can draw and the results. I think there's something there. So I'm going to stay away from him.
Yeah, I think for me it's hard. Like the number is incredibly appealing, but there's so many other names in this range that are also incredibly appealing. And like I said, we're going to have to pick spots where we're not going to want to get invested. Obviously the off the field, off the course stuff, and the stuff with his grandpa, and it's just he's going to pop and he's going to win at a decent number, and then we're going to be kicking ourselves because he's going to be back in that 12 to 15 or even lower range very, very soon. Let's go beyond here and let's look at some a little bit longer shots. I think there's some interesting names in here. Tyrrell Hatton, 35, his top 5 player in the world right now. Hideki at Matsuyama was the basically dominating this course before it ended after round 1 last year at 40 to 1. I'm always good for Patrick Reed. What names, if we're looking at say 30 to, I don't know, we can go all the way down to say 60, 66, all the way down to like Jason Kokrak. Anybody in here especially garnering interest from you?
Well, clearly, as you know, I've placed my weekly Tommy Fleetwood outright bet. So I think I got him at 46, so like $10 to win $460. I mean, why wouldn't you do that? And he has actually, I think, his last 2 out of 0 top 10s. So he has a decent track record here, although limited. Matsuyama, as you mentioned, a terrific track record here. Patrick Reed, I think, is a guy who, correct me if I'm wrong, he missed the cut last week.
Yes.
So I think he's kind of a prime bounce back guy. Neiman, statistically, I always love him. Right now, Neiman ranks number 1 overall in ball striking. So we always talk about that sharp tee to green game being the key to kind of getting success on some of these courses. So I always like Neiman there because of the ball striking. And Adam Scott, another guy who has a terrific track record. If you don't believe me, go see my post on fakepigskin.com. It's all detailed on there. So he's another guy. Like I said before, I do want to look at history a little bit more this week. Not that it's an end-all, be-all, but definitely lean in direction of course history here. Another guy I want to mention too, Billy Corsil, also been playing really good. Another missed the cut last week, another prime bounce back candidate. So I think he's someone to keep an eye on.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you on a lot of those guys. Joaquin Neiman is, I think, closer to, like, obviously Morikawa and Victor and that young wave that's coming. I think they're probably a tier or maybe tier 2 above Joaquin Neiman, but I think he's a lot closer to those people than the odds definitely say, and I think that some people want to give him credit for. This is a really super talented young player, and I think he's not really getting the attention he deserves just because how incredible those other young players are. Answers numbers move significantly. I want to say it was like 80 or 85. When I did this yesterday, I created my board and then I updated it a little bit this morning. He was 80 yesterday. He was 70 this morning. I want to say he was 85, maybe 90. He's a guy that I've heard some buzz on. I obviously can play extremely well in a course like this and can really dial in those long irons to take this course apart. Adam Scott's incredibly interesting, as you mentioned, 80 to 1. I feel like that's significantly better number than we were getting, even back in Phoenix or the California swing. So I like that a lot. I will say I have a few bets placed already. I have an outright on Paul Casey. I got it at 55. It's obviously 40 on DraftKings, so I'm pretty happy with that. I'm also here for Sung J M at 55. This is a guy who won the Honda last year. This is a guy that can rip off really good results, course after course after course. But this year feels a little different, Bobby. Should we have a little concern about Sung Jae, or do you think maybe we're getting a little value at 55?
I think you're definitely getting value. Still 13th ranked in ball striking, so the tee to green game is still there. I think it's just kind of more of like kind of refining the putting on weeks and maybe the driver a little bit. But no, I think he is really sharp tee to green overall, and it's just a matter of kind of getting a good putter week to week. But I think that, like you said, I think there's value now at 55-1. I think maybe like you mentioned with Neiman, I agree with you that for some odd reason he's not maybe treated like some of those other younger guys, but he still has had the results. I mean, he's won on the tour. He has a ton of number one in ball striking. He has tons of top tens, and he's a birdie machine. I think he ranks near the top of the PGA in birdies per round. So that's a huge critical factor when you're talking about whether it's contending on the field in real life, and of course DFS. I mean, you got to keep making birdies.
Yep. Scoring is critical, and I'm excited about him this week. I also took a shot on Cory Connors before this tournament. So I took him before API started. I looked at some of the futures, and I got him at 175-1. Little did I know that Cory Connors and Bryson would be two of the guys in basically the final three at API. But where are we at with Cory Connors? Like, do you think he has tournament winning upside at a course like the Players or at like a big field like this? Or is he going to be a guy that, is competitive, is really compelling for DraftKings? We'll have weeks where he pops and is kind of in that final grouping or final couple groupings. But in terms of taking the leap kind of to that Tony Finau group, like, do you think he has the goods to kind of jump up a level and win a big tournament like this?
I think that's just the next step for him in his progression as a player on the tour. I mean, he's won before, but I think winning these bigger events is going to be the key for him. And we saw last week he was in contention for one of those marquee events, really. And again, he's the guy. He's kind of our favorite on paper profile. We got 11th in ball striking. Strokes gained approach ranks 18th. So with him, again, a lot of it is always coming back to what is he doing with his putter. Very sharp tee to green guy. It's the weeks where he can kind of read those greens better, get that hot wand going. He's going to be right up there in the leaderboard in the mix most of the time. Yeah,
I'm 100% with you there. And it really feels like with a lot of these golfers, there's the one thing that they need to do, and they don't even need to do it like extremely well. Like if Jordan Spieth can drive the ball kind of field average, then he's going to be in the conversation.
That's it for sure.
If Cory Connors can putt field average or even a little bit below, he could be in the conversation. We saw it with Morikawa when he dominated the field. If everything just so, and his new putting stroke comes together just enough, and he's kind of in the mix, he's gonna lap the field, and he won by 3 shots. Like, there's a lot that you can, and so you have to find. Obviously, there's gonna be weeks where you're gonna take shots on guys that aren't gonna come through, but if you can say, okay, if all these things kind of follow suit and they have that 1 week and they have the ability to jump up, make a huge difference and kind of do all that. Bobby, beyond kind of the 100-1 range, maybe not even for, outrights, but if we're looking at top 5s, top 10s, top 20s, is there anybody that, as you're going through building your DFS core, getting your lineups ready, that you thought this guy could be a tremendous value, and I think he has the ability to jump up in a big way?
Yeah, one guy I mentioned a little bit in the post this week was Sam Burns. Another prime bounce back candidate. He's been having a great season, probably his best season on tour so far in his career, and missed the cut last week. So I think he's good for a prime bounce back. And all around statistically, listen to this, 22 in ball striking, 33 in strokes gained approach, 22 in strokes gained putting. So just a really sharp all-around game. And I think a guy who, is looking to come back from a missed cut last week in a really good spot. So I like him a lot, whether it's outright, maybe not, outright, but maybe like a top 20, top 10 type finish. And then DFS for sure. I think he's in the mid 7K range. So I like him there. Another guy is Russell Henley.
Mm-hmm.
Another guy, again, maybe a top 20 finish, ranks 25th in ball striking, 5th in strokes gains approached. He's one of those kind of, he needs the putter. That's it, right? A lot of guys we just talked through. A lot of these guys are they're really sharp tee to green, great off the tee. It just comes down to how they're doing on the greens most of the weeks is how it's going to turn up, whether they're, making a cut, whether they're top 25, whether they're contending. So I like Henley too, is kind of a deeper cut there. And those are ones I want to bet.
Yeah, I think those are both great names. As somebody who bet Sam Burns last week, I can tell you there's going to be a lot of hesitation for people to go back to him. And I think both from DFS and from the outright market, I think he makes a ton of sense. I think if he performed last week like we expected him to win, or to at least be in the mix and at least makes the weekend and that kind of stuff, he's 75 or 80 at least. Where now he's out, so 125. You can get a top 20 on him 4-1. You can get a top 20 on Russell Henley at 4-1. Once again, all these odds come from DraftKings Sportsbook. Shop it around. You might be able to find a better number. I think Cory Connors could make sense in that kind of looking for top 5, top 10, top 20. Find some nice potential. Like I mentioned, I like Tony Finau as a top 5, 4-1. Like, it's not incredibly sexy, but you're getting those you're getting those 5 spots. And Tony Finau, his floor is so much lower that more weeks than not, he's going to be in that conversation, in that mix, and make a hell of a lot of sense. Bobby, before we drop our favorite bets for the week, let's talk a little DK. Let's dive into some of your initial leans. Obviously, go check out on fakepigskin.com Bobby's article each and every week, but he's got a ton of players content up there. What names are you looking at as guys that maybe, let's start at the top of the board. Is there a name that of the elites that you're gonna fade or not use this week?
Yeah, I think in fields like this, my general approach, as you may recall, is to kind of avoid the 5-figure guys and maybe couple together like maybe 4 guys in that like 9K range.
Yeah.
And then dip down and maybe grab a couple 6, 7K guys to balance it out. That said, I'm kind of bucking that strategy a little bit. I'm kind of pretty bullish on the winners. I really do think it's going to come from maybe DJ or Rory.
Mm-hmm.
I have, or I should say, and Tony Finau. So I have all 3 of those guys I want in DK this week.
Okay.
We know how important it is to have the winner.
Yeah.
And, I want all 3 of those guys. So I do like DJ, Rory, and Tony Finau as at the top as my top 3 guys.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Because it is so easy to go, ooh, Bryson's only 97, and Webb's 95, and Colin Morikawa, and Victor Hovland, and Patrick Cantlay, and Tony Finau, and Patrick Reed. All these guys are in the 9K range. And I think it's going to be so easy for everyone to say, you know what, screw it. Let's jump down to the 9K. Let's start our lineups there and completely overlook Dustin or completely overlook Rahm. And if you're shooting for GPPs, if you're shooting for those big prize contests, I think that's going to be an interesting way to be different this week, is to target some of the guys over 10K, especially with Brooks withdrawing. I mean, you're going from Xander at 10.3 down to JT at 9.9. Like, that's $400 for one spot. That's crazy. I think a lot of people, I could see a lot of people starting with Bryson at 97. And then, as you mentioned, just pounding that 9K range, or even like the 8Ks with Tyrrell Hatton, with Paul Casey, with Sung Jae. So many names in there. But yeah, I think I'm with you. I'm going to try and get some of those elite options. John Rahm makes a hell of a lot of sense. Rory, I'm with you there, especially from DK. I'm a lot more interested in Rory as a guy that I expect to perform well. And I think I will get some Bryson exposure just because like I said, I bet him outright. I think he's playing really, really well. and getting him below 10K seems kind of crazy. You don't have to be different with all 6 golfers, but you have to be different, especially if you want to take down the big prizes. So I will have some Bryson, but I will definitely pivot off there as well. Can we get a 10K guy or 2 and then maybe drop and then skip that whole 9K range and get down to say 8 and 7s and kind of build from there? Is that something you think you could be interested in, or is that getting a little too cute?
Well, no, there's a couple approaches I think I'm going for. So DJ and Rory are in; they're locked into 2 spots. Tony, I think where you kind of go 2 different ways is I want to lock in Tony to my 3rd, but if I didn't, I think a guy like maybe like Sam Burns, for example, we talked about. I think locking him in at like a 75-ish, I think, range, that might help balance it out, so you're not really having to dig deep into the 6K range. Because once I do DJ, Rory, and Tony, I'm taking 3 deep shots in the 6K range. I'm almost forced to. And by the way, I want to say that because of that, one of my core 4 players this week is Doug Gibb. I do think at 6,200, because I'm kind of forced to shop in that range, I really like him. I've talked about him a few different times in the post this year. Guy has good, solid stats. It's been translating to on-the-course success. And last week, he was shooting up the leaderboard in round 3 with a 65, kind of quietly surging there. And then, it all went to hell on the final day with the win. He shot an 81 and, fell apart. But a lot of guys fell apart. So I'm kind of willing to look past that. I think he's a guy who's he's super talented. One of the young players is kind of on the way up. So if I'm kind of shot in that range, I'm going to continue kind of going in his direction to help balance out my budget.
Yeah, no, I think Doug Gibb is a great name. Is that about as low as you're willing to go this week? Like if you obviously mentioned you have to dive into that 6K range. I don't want to get super low either, but there is a few options down here. Andrew Putnam is somebody that's kind of interesting to me. Like I don't want to go crazy, but I think maybe one guy below 65 could make some sense. Maybe 2, but I'd rather not. But what say you?
Yeah, I think you try to look for reasons, right? To like give you a reason to take a shot. Maybe just if it's a simple stat, just go, well, he's good in this stat. Like for example, Harry Higgs has been scuffling really badly lately, but he still ranks pretty high up there in birdies per round. So he's a player who we've seen get hot before in different courses, and he can score pretty well. So he's someone, I think he's actually minimum price of 6K. If you're forced to kind of shop in these ranges, I think you can at least lean in that direction. Go, okay, you know what? Maybe you catch him on that week where he can kind of turn it around a little bit. So he's a guy like that I might consider. Putnam, like you said, I actually mentioned him this week in the post just by saying, he's been a very streaky guy in his career. And right now he's been on a pretty good one. He's made his last 6 cuts, and 3 of those have been top 10 finishes. So I definitely think someone, if you're looking here, making deep shots, those are decent considerations. Another guy I mentioned was Malnati. Is it Paul Malnati, I think it is?
Peter Malnati.
Peter. Well, I knew Paul or Peter. Same thing. All right. He's a guy ranks also inside the top 20 in birdies per round. Again, pretty inconsistent lately, but I think sometimes when the scoring upside is there, you kind of at least can convince yourself, okay, if he can avoid blowing up and, avoid like the big doubles and the big numbers, he's a guy who's probably going to come away with 4 or 5 birdies every day. That's at least something, right?
100%. And that could be the way to be unique, right? Like you could be a little more, you could use Finau and you could use Bryson, and then you could find the guy in the 6K or even like the low 7K and be able to kind of pencil in lineup. So Bobby, who is the one player your DK lineups will not be built without?
Rory McIlroy, the last Players Championship winner in 2019.
I like it. And before we get out of here, I appreciate you hopping on. Make sure you're heading to Fake Pigskin each and every week to check out Bobby's article, to check out who he's backing from over on DraftKings. Helps you build your core, and then you kind of put in some pieces, helps you figure out what's important to have around there. But Bobby, I'm going to give you the floor. What's your best bet? You can have an outright and a placement, or you could have two outrights. Like, give me a name or two that you love this week for the players.
So I think last time we were on here, again, it was kind of boring, but I think the Masters I went. Dustin was kind of a little bit cheaper coming into the Masters. I think he was around maybe 15 or 16 to 1, I think. Anyway,
that sounds about right.
McIlroy is there right now. I think he's currently at 14 to 1 on DK. But again, McIlroy, I think, is my outright winner. I think it's going to come from him or DJ. And then I think I'll just say, if I had to go deeper, I've kind of already talked about it enough. I don't want to be too much of a broken record, but Finau at 20 to 1. And then everyone knows my opinion that Tommy Fleetwood 45 to 1. I'm going to be there when it happens. So I'll just leave it there.
I like it. He played well last week. It seems to be coming, his stateside golf seems to be returning. It really is interesting to see some of these players kind of shifting and now shifting back. Spieth coming back, Fleetwood coming back. Really curious to see. So for now, I have Bryson at 25, Casey at 55, Sungjae at 55, and Cory Connors at 175. Those are my 4 bets. I love Tony Finau as a top 5 option. I want to add one more golfer to my list, Bobby, and maybe you can give me the name that I should be adding. But I got at my book, I have Patrick Reed and I have Daniel Berger both at 40 to 1. If you had to bet on one of them this week, which one are you betting?
I would say Berger.
Okay.
Just the all-around, really sharp statistically. And he's won, I think, has he won?
And I think he won in Florida coming out of the restart, right? Wasn't he part of that? It was like Webb and then him and then...
Yeah, he's won twice since the restart.
Yeah.
So he's a guy who's, I think, again, doesn't necessarily get the Morikawa-like credit, but
yeah,
he's won multiple times. It's so hard to win once. So definitely Berger. But I'll say, if I had to take a deeper cut for a lot of reasons, like we mentioned, I forgot to add in this little nugget about Sam Burns. He ranks 11th in birdies per round on the PGA. That's between Bryson DeChambeau and Tony Finau. So that's the kind of company he's keeping right now statistically. I will probably have some shekels on him as one of my deeper cuts.
I like that. I think that could make a ton of sense. And even like a top 20 on him is 4 to 1. I think that makes a hell of a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I like the Sam Burns call, especially in DK where he is crazy cheap. I think a lot of people got burned by him. No pun intended. And I think they will be shy to go back to. I'm really going to check. I'm really curious to see some of the ownership projections tomorrow. I will be doing some digging to see if I can't figure out, ways to kind of pivot on some names. We'll see who's going to be really popular. Bobby, thank you so much for hopping on. I'm glad we're able to do this. We will have to reconvene for the Masters and the U.S. Open and all these big tournaments. But for Bobby Adcock, make sure you're following him on Twitter at Real Bobby Adcock. Make sure you're reading his work each and every week at fakepigskin.com. I'm Kyle Robert. I'll be back on Thursday to talk NASCAR with Brian Twining, as well as next week to break down the NCAA tournament. Can't wait. So much fun stuff to bet on. We'll talk to y'all next time.
Thanks, Kyle.